Hey there, gamer.
What makes a good game? Is it how much fun the gameplay is? Is it the richness of the story? Is it the graphics? What about the music? Is it just how it all comes together? In my opinion, a good game, a good piece of media, whether it's a book, movie, show, song, or game, is whether you're thinking about it long after you finished it. Danny Phantom ended in the mid-2000s, and my wife just got a tattoo from it. Weezer dropped their Blue album before I was born, and somehow the Buddy Holly guitar solo is the new Rickroll. Harry Potter's final chapter dropped over a decade and a half ago, and Hogwarts houses are still zodiac signs for weird millennials. The value of a work is its ability to make you think, its ability to stick with you. And honestly, for better or worse, Y2K, a postmodern RPG, has been a permanent resident in my mind dungeon since its release half a decade ago. When Y2K first released in 2019, it was almost universally panned. The wider internet had agreed on many things. Y2K's main character, Alex, is an unlikable man-child who's awful to all of his friends, and you have to endure 20 hours with him. The combat was lengthy, unbalanced, unfun, and unrewarding. The dialogue was wordy. The plot made no sense. The tonal whiplash from one scene to another could break your neck. 5 years later, Y2K received an update that aimed to address its criticisms. Is that enough to fix a game that was panned as one of the worst games ever? Before I answer that, I should fill you in on what Y2K is, the controversy surrounding it, and the update that supposedly fixes it. I'll avoid spoiling anything, but just know that most other videos won't be so kind. This game is spelled YIIK, and it's pronounced Y2K, but some like to call it YIIK. And it's a turn-based RPG, reminiscent of Earthbound. It features low-poly visuals inspired by PS1 games like Mega Man Legends, and initially used minigames in its combat in a WarioWare meets Paper Mario sort of way. The year is 1999, and Alex Eggleston, a recent college graduate, video game nerd, and overall unlikable dweeb, returns from college to find himself in the midst of a supernatural mystery as he and his friends go on a quest to find a missing girl whose disappearance went viral on a paranormal internet forum. As they follow every lead that they can, they discover creatures from other realities, along with the fact that their reality might be crumbling as well, and they start to wonder if the Y2K panic, or the fear of the world ending when the year 2000 rolls over, is justified. Now I said I'd talk about the controversy, right? Other than the poor reception to the gameplay, Y2K had earned some ire from the internet for its treatment of the deaths of real people. In a graveyard in an early segment of the game, you can find a grave marked Satoru Iwata, the late Nintendo president. Personally, I don't see an issue with including a tribute to an influential figure in a work, but some found it odd since it was placed next to a gravestone that included a joke about how the Allanson brothers worked themselves to death on the game. This pales in comparison to the Elevator Girl controversy though. Semi-Pop's disappearance from an elevator is the inciting incident that sets off the events of the game, but it's based off the real footage of the disappearance of Elisa, a real person. In Y2K, the denizens of Onism, a paranormal message board with vibes similar to 4chan, spread the footage of Semi's disappearance to the point of virality, and spend threads upon threads obsessing over her disappearance. They try sneaking into her workplace, finding pictures of her wherever they can. It's a horrifying parasocial relationship. Many folks take issue with the fact that not only is this character's disappearance based on a real person's death, but that in the game she's a fanbase of sickos trying to find out what happened to her. My take is that art can be based off of real life. American Horror Story's Hotel season is also based off of Elisa Lam's death, but I don't think it receives the same level of scrutiny. I also feel like the creepiness of Onism's users is a good thing. Y2K's story is partially based on the online obsession of Lam's disappearance. It shows the darkness that can spring from an audience that wants to dig into a tragedy. Fact is, people love to learn about this sort of stuff. It's why true crime podcasts are a staple of the medium, and why Dahmer topped Netflix charts. Onism shows the ugly side of that obsession, and I think that a lot of people are uncomfortable with that truth. Art should be controversial, and Y2K isn't afraid to walk that line. I'm personally fine with Y2K being based on the online buzz around the death of Elisa Lam. It's uncomfortable, but I don't think we should be afraid to address the culture around true crime. Let me know what you think. There's a lot of nuance to this topic, and I want to know how everyone else feels. My first exposure to this game was through a video from Jack Saint, where he played through the game and aired his grievances about it. He hated the characters, he hated the combat, he hated the story. I had never heard a more scathing review of anything before. Hearing of Y2K's failings didn't send me running though. Instead, like a train wreck, it drew me in. I needed to know more about it. Everything about Y2K seemed like it should work. Its combat looked fun. Its art drew me in. The music? Amazing. Even if everyone seemed to hate this game, I thought there was still a chance I could enjoy it, even in a so bad it's good sort of way. Movies like The Room and Birdemic were fun to watch because they were so bad. Maybe I'd enjoy this worst game ever in a similar way. I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. Y2K had been portrayed as some kind of failure of the genre. A pointless story, unlikable characters, long, boring combat, a waste of time, 20 hours you'll never get back. But that's not what I experienced. I played a game that was almost dreamlike, something that felt like they'd added an RPG element to LSD Dream Emulator. The world was filled with surreal, gorgeous visuals juxtaposed against standard suburbia, and I never knew where the plot was headed next. Its dialogue sometimes fell flat, but more often than not, I really enjoyed my time with the characters. Even Alex, through all his self-obsession and monologuing, made for a compelling character. I hated the guy, but I also hate all the characters on Always Sunny, and that's one of my favorite shows. Not to mention that his monologuing actually serves a story purpose. I don't want to spoil it, but as you play, he drops a few nuggets that make you realize he's narrating for a reason, and it all leads to a pretty cool payoff. Unfortunately, I feel like most people drop off before they get there. Beyond that, Y2K has one of the greatest soundtracks of any game that I have ever played. It's one of my favorite albums to put on while in the car, with loads of amazing battle themes, great background tunes for character moments, and one of the best theme songs with The Crow and the Machine. I've been humming that track for years, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. The most interesting part of Y2K, though, was its hidden ending. There were two endings to YIIK. The standard one that most players would get, and a secret rose-tinted ending that's difficult to discover unless you know exactly what you're doing. But there's almost playground-level chatter regarding an elusive third ending. There's a sequence of mysterious tasks that you need to complete to reach this ending, including naming your character Zelda, finding an invisible item that only spawns 5% of the time, and talking to an NPC that you can only see if you do all of the above. Even if you manage all of that, you still have to do more before you see the third ending. These are only the first steps on the way, and Y2K fans, including myself, have been poring over the game for years trying to unravel this mystery. While Y2K was frustrating for me in some places, other parts drove me to continue. Playing it felt like I was digging through a mine on a hunt for diamonds. For every repetitive battle I had to slog through, I was rewarded with phenomenal music. For every bugged boss battle that I whittled down to 1 HP just to find out I was supposed to lose, there was a new story beat, and that made me want to know more about this game's world. It was an interesting paradox. I hated the game more when things were bad, because the parts that were good were so good. It was at that point that I realized Y2K was special to me. When I was upset at the game, it wasn't because I hated it. It was because I loved it, and I wanted it to do better. I felt like a parent, aware of my kid's potential, and I was sad that potential felt squandered. I think Y2K's actual parents, Andrew and Brian Allanson, the developers at YIIK that made the game, felt similarly. In 2020, just 1 year after the game's initial launch, YIIK announced that Y2K would be getting 2 updates, one with some quality of life changes, and one with some more major changes. The first, 1.25, released in early 2021, and it made some changes that made the combat a little more fun, reduced monologues, and added new story content, along with some quality of life updates. It made the game better, but it wasn't enough to get me to pick it back up. I was waiting for the big update, the one that would later be revealed as Y2K I.V, or 1.5. IV is a complete rehaul of the game. New combat system, brand new story beats, reworked sections, new music. Y2K IV is like a remix and a director's cut, all in one. It's familiar, yet alien in some ways. It recontextualizes the story that you've already experienced, but it makes it more palatable for new audiences. And wildest of all, it's free! It's an update that took just as long as the game's initial development, that adds hours of new content on top of remixed, improved content. And it's free! One of the first things Y2K IV changes is its opening. The original Y2K opened immediately with Alex going home to Frankton and settling into life at home. It's very earthboundy and helps lure the player into a false sense of security. The game starts grounded, then you enter the factory hotel, and things start to ramp up and get weird. While I think getting someone's guard down and subverting their expectations makes for fun storytelling, Y2K's IV update changes things up. The new opening is a cryptic cutscene introducing you to the cast, shot similar to the opening of an artsy movie by a Kubrick or an Anderson. Whether you played the original or if this is your first time with YIIK, it's a bit confusing. Before you can process what you've watched, you're dropped into the surreal landscape of the Blackened Pond, a dark lake at the foot of a massive tower, guarded by a giant baby head. By starting off with the confusing and surreal, it sets the tone for the game a little better. It'll scare off the casuals, but for those interested in the game lore, it'll draw them in deeper. Who's this mysterious new character? Who is she talking about when she refers to the good brother and the bad brother? What does she have to do with the story we already know? As soon as these questions arise, the story cuts to Y2K's original opening moments, where Alex returns home from college. Everything remains familiar until Alex meets a new character that hooks him up to an IV and introduces him to the new battles, the Karta system. It's a drastic departure from the original battles. Gone are the simple minigames and damage maxing. Y2K is turned into more of a strategic RPG. The new battles are initially a little tough to get a grasp on, but the best way to put it is that Karta are unique power-ups, and work as shields to keep your HP safe, since your opponent can't damage you until your Karta are gone. If you've played Yu-Gi-Oh!, think of it like attacking your opponent's life points when their field is empty. It's also a massive quality of life change, since your Karta heal automatically after a battle. You won't need to heal your HP as often, meaning less backtracking for healing fountains, and less money wasted on healing items. While Y2K 1.0 initially had me avoiding battles because they were slow and repetitive, I started grinding for fun in IV because I loved the Karta battles. They weren't just fun, new music for battles slapped, the surreal visuals made for a great backdrop, the new UI made for a more cinematic feeling, and the battles were so much faster than the originals. Y2K IV adds hours of new content, yet the speedy new battle system shaved so much time off the clock that I reached the credits for the first time at about 20 hours, the same playtime as the original. When I say hours of new content, I mean it too. There's scenes with the new nameless protagonist from the intro sprinkled throughout the game's runtime, along with new boss fights, new characters, and new cutscenes. And oh boy, the new cutscenes. There are just so many of them, all of which add more mystique and depth to the story. They aren't just character portraits flapping their lips at each other, these are animated scenes composed and shot with artistic vision. You can tell that there's some inspiration from the film greats here. New scenes can make a boss battle that seemed random in YIIK's original version feel like an intimidating enemy fight that was truly earned. Some cutscenes from the original got this treatment too, and it makes the characters feel more alive and draws you deeper into the story. One major change is the infamous Golden Alpaca scene. In the original Y2K, Rory is lamenting over the loss of his younger sister, just for the party to be attacked by a golden alpaca in what felt like a so random LOL scene. The background music was silly horns, and the alpaca would shout, "Lemonade!" while attacking. In the update to Y2K, when Vela shouts, "It's a golden alpaca! Run!" it's not funny anymore. The cutscene is masterfully composed and executed, and adds an air of panic to the scene. The golden alpaca is no longer a yellow farm critter. It's a muscular, winged, anthropomorphic angel wielding a sword, and his goal is to slaughter those who break the rules of the multiverse. After effortlessly slicing a soul survivor in two, he turns to face the party and asks, "How will you justify your continued existence?" One of the hardest lines that I have ever heard in fiction. The improved cutscenes even include Alex's monologues. While these used to be him just talking to the viewer as a portrait in a text wall visual novel style, it now cuts to him narrating from a stage. It no longer feels like pointless monologuing to break up the action. He's on stage for a reason, and you'll want to find out why. Some of the other new content is music. You know how I said Y2K has an amazing soundtrack? Y2K IV includes everything I love from the original and adds 100 new tracks, doubling the amount of songs in the soundtrack. There's plenty of bass-heavy funk, blues, and even some punk mixed in alongside the more video gamey music in there. The soundtrack spans multiple genres, but manages to stay cohesive not despite how eclectic it is, but because of it. Y2K is incredibly dreamlike and surreal, and its soundtrack makes for the perfect fit. The most dreamlike and surreal area in Y2K is the new Mine Dungeon. In Y2K, you don't level up as you get XP. Instead, you spend your XP in the Mine Dungeon to improve your stats. In the original version, it was just a dank, literal dungeon with linear progression as you power it up. In IV, it's a brand new area. You can still level up, but the process is drastically simplified. You just choose one of 3 stat boosts. It's no longer a grindy slog to level up, and that's not the only thing you do here anymore. The Mine Dungeon is now a fully 3D area to explore, with massive soul survivors towering above you and a mysterious spiral in the neon-colored sky. As you explore the dungeon, you can discover new Karta, power up the Karta that you have, and find new abilities to use in battle. I also want to add that with Y2K IV, the game doesn't end when you hit the credits at 20 hours in. There is still plenty of new content to explore, and I don't just mean finding the second ending and hunting down that elusive third ending, or any other new endings that might be out there. I've completed Y2K IV, beaten New Game Plus, and finished New Game Plus Plus, and I am doing another loop. I still want to play more. This is a game that has me absolutely hooked, and I just want to dive deeper and deeper. I want to find the third ending. I want to learn more about Alex and his friends. Even after 40 hours with the update, I'm still discovering new things, and that's not including the 20 I spent playing 1.0. Y2K has been one of my favorite games for years. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, and I don't think I ever will. However, it was very much a diamond in the rough, with all kinds of problems that made it hard to recommend. It felt like a very ambitious game that fell short due to the limits that come from being an indie team with limited staff, time, and budget. When given a few years to work on it, it feels like the Allanson brothers really achieved their artistic vision with Y2K IV. The writing, the music, the cutscene composition, every single element of the game feels like art in its own right, but it felt sometimes the limitations of gameplay got in the way of that with 1.0. IV makes the game more approachable and more fun from a gameplay standpoint, dials up the mystery, and adds hours of new content. What was initially I'd recommend this game, but is now I wholeheartedly recommend this game. To answer my question earlier, can Y2K, a game that was once called the worst game ever, be saved by such a massive update? The answer is yes, absolutely. But also no, I don't think it ever needed to be saved. Maybe both? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching my video, and I'll catch you in the next one.